Trying to run a business throughout the COVID-19 pandemic is hard enough, but imagine your landlord locks you out of your current location, and in mere days you have to find a new place that meets your needs. This is what happened to my friend Julie at Refined Sugar Cakes. But she knew her passion for cake making and her love of her customers had to drive her forward. I'm gonna head in and talk to Julie now and see how she plans on bouncing back.
I baked with my grandmothers, or my grandmother and my great-grandmother, and baking was just something we did in my family. My grandmother was very, very well known for her apple pies. And so she taught me multiple times how to make her apple pies. I've never been able to do it because I can't make pie, but that's kind of how it started. And then my mom and my sister, we would always do a lot of Christmas baking. But when I was in high school, I worked for a place that did kids' birthday parties. And so one day the lady who decorated the cakes didn't show up. And they said, "Julie, you've baked before, decorate a cake." And I went, "I've never decorated a cake in my life, but okay." Started winging it a little bit. And that's when I kind of went, hey, I can do this. When I would take a recipe and change it. I would very seldom follow a recipe. And even my cake recipes now that I do are my recipes. They're not something I've taken from somebody else. Started doing it a little bit for family and friends. Then I did my brother-in-law and sister-in-law's wedding cake. And it was a very simple cake, just a single tier and then a bunch of cupcakes. There was a chef there from Toronto. He happened to try the cake and said, "You need to sell these." This was at the time when cupcakes were in their height. And he said, "These are the best cupcakes I've ever had in my life. You need to sell these." I just started looking for space, and I found a space and opened my first bakery called The Bake Shop. We were a full service bakery. We did everything, cakes, pies, breads. We got very busy very quickly, and it ended up almost being too much. I was working about 110 hours a week. It was just too much between trying to be an entrepreneur and a mom and a wife. I wasn't doing any of it well at that point. So we closed the bakery. There's not a clear-cut answer of it's time to close. So it was really tough to have to make that decision. And I felt like a failure. It was just awful because we lost everything. We had to sell our house to pay off the debt and move back into my parents' basement. Everything I'd worked so hard for the last year and a half came to nothing. I went to work for a Marble Slab Creamery store. I was hired as a cake decorator and to-go product manager. I kind of started to feel that ownership of the business anyway. My boss at the time noticed this. I was appreciative that I was taking the initiative of that. Asked me one day, "What do you want to do?" He said, "Do you want to buy an ice cream store?" And I said, "Absolutely not." But he said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to do custom cakes." And he said, "Do you want a business partner?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And 2 days later, he sent me a listing for a bakery that was for sale in downtown Kitchener and said, "Want to buy a bakery?" 2 months later, we had keys. In the fall of 2016, that Refined Sugar opened, things grew pretty steadily with the custom cake business, especially weddings. 90% of our business is weddings. I do between 70 and 100 weddings a year, usually. But we were definitely on track to do way more than we'd ever done. We were probably going to be looking at about 140 weddings for 2020, including some of the biggest cakes and most ornate cakes of my career. With any small business, finances, of course, are a struggle. As you get busier, it's great, but you're working so much, you're getting busy, that's great. You hire somebody else, and then all of a sudden you're cash poor again. So you need to hire somebody to bring, to make it workable for everybody, but then any chance of a profit is gone. When you're just walking that line and you've already used up your credit and there's nothing else left, the only place it comes from is paychecks. That's really all there is. I can't say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't buy flour this week." So I just don't get paid. And that's a really difficult spot to be in when you've got to manage a family. And my husband and I struggle. There are times when we barely see each other. And then we've got 2 special needs kids. Both of our kids have autism. So it's difficult to find the balance of trying to be good enough at everything. You don't have, never promised to be great at anything, but I'm trying to be good enough. When the pandemic was declared, it was pretty quick that things started canceling. All of these emails start coming in from brides saying our venue has just canceled, or our venue has, said that things may have to change. And panic was the first thing that came in, like, how am I gonna get through this? So my business partner and I discussed it. We started going through the math. How are we gonna do this? How are we gonna keep the staff? The short answer is that we couldn't. There was no way for us to be able to pay rent, pay anything, if we had no orders coming in. So my biggest fear long term is that I lose everything again. I already closed the doors to my first shop, and then I closed the doors to the first refined sugar. I can't fathom having to do it again and close the doors on everything that I've worked so hard for.